All right. Thank you for joining us for today's Cabinet Outs. I'm pleased to welcome Premier Tim Houston, and the Premier is going to start today with some opening remarks. Premier.
Good morning, everyone. On April 18th and 19th, 2020, the lives of countless people were forever changed in a devastating mass casualty that affected communities in Nova Scotia, Canada, the United States, and beyond. The mass casualty created profound grief for those most impacted, and 5 years later, we continue to experience its far-reaching effects. We remember Tom Bagley, Kirsten Beaton and her unborn child, Greg and Jamie Blair, Joy Bond and Peter Bond, Lillian Campbell, Corey Ellison, Gina Goulet, Don and Frank Galanchuk, Alana Jenkins and Sean McLeod, Lisa McCulley, Heather O'Brien, Jolene Oliver, Aaron Tuck and Emily Tuck, Constable Heidi Stevenson, E. Joanne Thomas and John Zoll, Joey Weber. We also remember those who have been lost in the years since April 20th, April 2020, who were deeply affected by these events. We turn our thoughts to those who continue to experience the impacts, both physically and psychologically, and in the years that have passed. And we remain committed to monitoring and reporting publicly on the initiatives that the governments of Canada and Nova Scotia and the RCMP are undertaking in response to the Mass Casualty Commission's final report. We will take the time to mourn and reflect, and we will continue our work. We extend our deepest sympathies to all those who have been impacted by the mass casualty. We all have a part to play in bringing about change to make our communities safer, and appreciate the efforts of everyone who continues to advocate for these changes. Thank you.
Are you satisfied with the pace that the recommendations are being worked through?
There's a tremendous amount of effort and focus, and certainly, you know, the partnership with the federal government and the RCMP on this. We respect that partnership. As a province, we're pushing hard. I think we all wish things would move faster, but I think there is progress being made.
On a completely different note, what goes through your mind when you hear Nova Scotians who have to go to Toronto for a lung transplant talk about the fact that it's become so cost prohibitive that they have either had to go deep into their own savings to cover the balance, or they contemplate not going through the procedure at all?
Yeah, these are difficult situations for sure. I think anytime we hear about somebody struggling with health issues and the tragedies and impacts around that on their families and themselves, they touch us all, because we all have, you know, situations in our own lives where people struggling with health issues, so for sure. So they're all very personal, and certainly as Premier, I feel all those situations personally as well. We invest a significant amount in healthcare, and the budget continues.
Recording in progress.
Increase. You know, there's always going to be work to be done on the healthcare file. There's always things we can do a little better and a little differently, and we're committed to always doing that. I do think we've made incredible progress on a number of fronts on healthcare, and certainly I think we've made some progress on the out of province stuff when people have to leave the province because it's not offered here, or it's maybe not offered timely enough, you know. So there is changes being made to that process, and we'll continue to look for ways to see how we can strengthen it.
A patient has said that they're going to send you a bill for the $40,000 they're out of pocket to cover the time they had to live in Toronto. What will be your response to them?
I haven't seen that bill, but certainly, I mean, these are deeply personal situations. I can certainly understand the emotions of dealing with a health situation, and then the compounding effect of financial pressure on top of it. These are really difficult situations. So I can appreciate where they would be coming from on that, and I would just say that as a province, we do what we can. I mean, we don't intentionally look away from somebody who needs something from the province. We always do what we can, and we always wish we could do a little more. And we'll look at these situations and see what's possible.
Premier, I want to ask you about the McDonald Bridge contract. Do you view Liberty Blast Tech, which is a firm formed by a couple U.S.-based companies, as a Nova Scotian joint venture?
I think the main thing on this, and this is the file that I was actually looked at quite a while ago when the trade stuff first started. This was flagged for me because I was curious to see if there was another way to approach this. And you know, my understanding is that there's not a Nova Scotian company that is able to do this work. And I don't even think there was a Canadian company that was able to do the work. But I am pleased that the work will be done. I have to check the numbers, but it's a really high percentage of Nova Scotians and Canadians that will actually be working on that. I think it was 70 or 80%, and supplies will come locally. It was also a high number, so in the 80 to 90% range. But the bridge, you know, you have to do this job right. There's public safety involved. So you have to make sure that you're dealing with companies that are qualified and able to do the work. And in this case, that's what we were faced with. But you know, we've been clear where it's a public safety issue. If we have to use an American company in the face of public safety, then we'll have to do that. But we'll always look for opportunities for Nova Scotia companies or Canadians.
In March, that U.S. firms will not be allowed to bid on government contracts, and that the province was looking at canceling existing contracts. How is this contract consistent with that position?
It's consistent because it's a matter of public safety, and this is the only people that we could find that could do the work.
Any rules or guidelines in place yet for U.S. bidders?
In terms of?
You made that announcement in March.
Yeah, we canceled some as well. I mean, where we could, we've canceled some. We've canceled a number, kind of in the fishery space for sure, and I think some other records keeping stuff. We've been very studious on this, but in this work needs to be done, and it has to be done by qualified, competent people, and you know, but it'll be done by a lot of Nova Scotians will work on that project.
How can we find out about those canceled contracts? I haven't heard of them.
We can try to get you something on that.
Gender-based violence data.
Cancel, a combination of canceled or stopped discussions, like just move. We're moving on.
Information you can give me on that would be great. I'd like to be able to illustrate what you're doing.
Given that the Mi'kmaq chiefs have rejected fracking and threatened legal action, do you still think it's worth pursuing fracking in Nova Scotia?
We have incredible natural resource potential in this province. Absolutely incredible. And green through wind, through hydro. We have incredible access to critical minerals. We have over 200 years of natural gas under our feet in this province, and every drop of every natural gas, every bit of natural gas that's used in this province comes from the United States. So in the sake of energy security, we need to work. We need to move forward on some of these opportunities. Also for our economic security, like we need to move forward. We need to grow our economy, and we need to focus on things where it can be done safely. So we've lifted the ban on fracking. We've lifted the ban on uranium mining in this province. That lifting of the ban allows for proper discussions, and there will be proper discussions. There will be a process for each of these projects, but I mean, fracking is something that it's a development method. There are others for onshore gas as well, but that method, the technology has changed a lot in the last 10, 15, 20 years, a lot. It's a very much more modern process than it might have been. People might be having it in their minds. So where it can be done safely and sustainable, we should do it, and we'll have those discussions.
If you do end up defending your position in court, though, do you still think that it's possible to move forward at the speed that you were hoping to with projects in natural resource development?
There's no option but to move forward. We will be moving forward in this province and growing our economy and supporting Nova Scotians.
It's not about the option of it. I just am wondering if you actually still think you can move at a faster pace if you're going to be in court defending.
The pace will be faster because the existing pace has been zero. So we can do better than zero in this province, and we will.
Ahead without the support of the Mi'kmaq chiefs.
We're working closely with them. We'll work closely with them. There'll be extensive consultations. There's work to be done for sure. We'll do the work.
You reached out since they sent out their notice about rejecting?
I've talked to a number of chiefs since then.
Gender-based violence data from RCMP, Halifax, and Cape Breton police show that the number of intimate partner violence homicides in the province last year was 3 times the average in the 9 preceding years. What do you make of this very recent spike in IPV murders?
I think the gender-based violence, domestic violence, these are long-standing serious issues in Nova Scotia and certainly beyond, and we have to, they deserve and require focused attention. And we're focusing attention on them, putting resources into the space to support people in that. But it's everybody has a responsibility. I would say men have a responsibility. If you see something, speak up. We all have a responsibility to support each other. But it's a troubling trend for sure.
Certainly, and the funding has been in progress. There are questions brought up about awareness campaigns, other ways of reaching specifically men and potential perpetrators. Do you have ideas for moving on that area?
Yeah, I think there's a lot. There's additional funding that's been made available for sure, and we'll continue to look for ways to support Nova Scotians and educate Nova Scotians.
When it comes to trade talks and forming new relationships, how productive have recent trips been to Denmark and Boston with forming those new relationships?
Really important. And I think one thing that I'm constantly reminded of is that the presence of the Premier is really important to counterparties in these discussions. We have a great province with incredible potential, and we need to diversify our trading partner list, and that's happening. The seafood show in Boston, lots of discussions with people from other countries who aren't necessarily consuming a lot of incredible Nova Scotia seafood, who are very interested, and discussing it directly with the Premier meant something to them. So I think there's a lot of positive stuff coming out of that. The discussions in Denmark around wind, there's incredible excitement about the offshore wind potential in Nova Scotia, but it was also good for me to hear, some of their concerns about, what's the access to market, how do we move the energy that's produced to bigger markets, cables, and what investments might be required there. And there will be investments that are required to build that industry, but those are discussions that are really important, and we'll continue to make sure that we promote Nova Scotia.
Is your government considering selling booze in convenience stores?
Well, there's a lot in progress to improve market access for our producers. We're producing great products, and certainly our wine industry is producing great products, and craft beers and distillers. We have great producers here, so we want to do what we can to make sure that they have access to markets. That's part of the interprovincial trade barriers, knocking that down to open up new markets for them. There's been some early discussions about new distribution channels in Nova Scotia. They're very early, and if we are to move on that, there'll be extensive consultations before that were to happen.
That's something that would require legislation, or can you do it through regulation?
I'm not sure. I'm not that far along.
That direct consumer booze clause in the MOU you signed yesterday, would they still have to pay that fee to the NSLC? Do you see what I mean? An Ontario producer selling direct to a customer in Nova Scotia?
So these are all things that are being discussed in that space. So the intent of the removal of the interprovincial trade barriers in a situation like this is that a product that's produced in Nova Scotia is treated a certain way by the Liquor Corp through the distribution channels. And right now, if you're not producing Nova Scotia, you're treated a different way, higher fees, whatever the case may be. But with the removal of the interprovincial trade barriers, you'd be treated the same. So something produced in Prince Edward Island or Ontario be treated the same as something produced in Nova Scotia. So what that fee structure looks like will be determined, but there would be equal treating.
Is the trade talk, negotiation, removing barriers, how's that going with New Brunswick?
I think everyone's at different stages. So I would say every premier appreciates that these barriers have not been a good thing for their respective economies and for the economy of Canada. Everyone's on that page. I think everyone is in just a little different place in how fast they move or how they approach it. So in Nova Scotia, we passed legislation to remove all the barriers. That's the first kind of bucket, I would say. Ontario's in that bucket as well. They have legislation. PEI is in that group as well. They have legislation before. There are other jurisdictions that want to remove exemptions, but maybe not all of them, or move a little slower. They're trying to assess which ones they can easily remove and which ones might take a little bit more work. So there's everyone's moving at their own pace, but I think everyone wants to get to a place where there's certainly less exceptions than exemptions, but I want to get to where there's all full-on free trade across the country. So everyone's moving in a direction. To answer your question specifically, I'd say there's progress.
Mr. Houston, can I ask, it's been a few weeks since the 25% tariff has been on steel. I'm curious to know if your office or you personally or your government has heard anything from Cherubini in Dartmouth, which would be directly affected by that. Also, have you heard from any businesses at this point in Nova Scotia who are interested in applying for the contingency fund? I'm just curious to know if there is anybody that you know of that's been directly affected by these tariffs.
Yeah, so I would say through the departments and staff, there's lots of discussions. I personally have spoke to, since you mentioned Cherubini, I'll mention them specifically. I've spoke to them personally. I've met with them. I've had a round table with, chambers. I've had a round table with impacted companies from across the province. So there are extensive discussions going on. The $200 million contingency fund, I don't believe that's been tapped into yet. But it is there. And, I'm sure we will need to tap into it at some point in some instances, but we're still kind of working through that. But we're keeping a very close contact with those impacted for sure.
A formal ask from anyone yet to access that
I have
fund?
not personally. I don't know if the department has, but I'm not aware of any.
Layoffs, like, at Cherubini or any of the paper plants. I mean, we haven't heard about that, but I guess that's why I raised the question.
Yeah, I haven't either. There's a lot of concern. I don't want to minimize there's a lot of companies that are very concerned. So I don't know what actions they may have specifically taken internal in their organizations, but I do know that there's a lot of concern, and I'm sure there have been some actions inside organizations just that I'm not aware of.
Leadership debate tonight, what are you hoping to see?
I'm hoping somebody stands up and says, I'm going to do everything on that list that Premier Houston sent me from Nova Scotia. Maybe they can do that. If I can hear that in one of the opening statements, I'll be able to turn it off and go do something else for the rest of the night. But, look, we have the relationship between the province of Nova Scotia and the federal government is very complex and very expansive. And we rely on each other for a lot of things. So we just want to have a good partner in Ottawa. And I have written to certainly the leader of the Liberal Party and the leader of the Conservative Party with the top big financial asks that I would have of the new government to work with us on. And we're sincere in those. There are other needs and asks back and forth, but we're going to work with who's ever there.
Can we just back to booze for 1 second? I know you said early discussions is how you phrased it. Are you kind of taking the lead on that, or is Minister Lohr taking the lead on that?
Are you talking about the new distribution in Nova Scotia?
Sorry.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I don't know that anyone's taken a lead on it. It's a concept that's been discussed in this province for a long time, and it's. I listen when people raise it. But if we are to move forward on that, there'll be some consultations. But I don't know if finance is any further along than that. But me personally, I'm intrigued by it, and I listen when I hear about it.
Clarify one thing on the MOU in Ontario. I just want to know if you think it might be strange that New Brunswick has removed barriers with Ontario in one day, but haven't signed a similar agreement with Nova Scotia?
No, I think the situation between Ontario and Nova Scotia is when they pass that legislation that's similar to ours, everything's gone. It's done. That's free trade, and that'll be the same with PEI. But not everyone will do succinct legislation like that. There's other approaches to remove. Some stuff might be, these barriers grew over time, over decades really, and some of them would be in regulation, and some of them would be in kind of a minister's letter or mandate letter or minutes or something. Some would be baked into legislation, and require legislation to remove. So for us in Nova Scotia, we did legislation to remove everything. So there's no uncertainty, nothing's missed or whatever, but others will use different approaches. So my understanding is Ontario and New Brunswick are talking, that MOU they'll talk about what can be removed and what's possible. We're also doing that as well with a number of provinces, including them.
That is our time with the
Okay,
Premier.
thanks
Thank you,
everyone.
Premier.
Okay, appreciate it.
All right. Next, we have Minister Drouin.
Much better, thank you.
Minister, now that, and I'm blanking on the bill number at the moment, but the one that has to do with legislation that's 10 years old or more that's on the books but not proclaimed, now that that bill has cleared the House,
that the events that led to CISA are really tragic events and very heartbreaking. And I greatly appreciate the family's advocacy around that. The Department of Justice and Service Nova Scotia have been working together to consider what our next steps are. We will be meeting with the families. Our priority is public safety. And so we're looking at next steps in relation to that. And I look forward to the conversation with the family and the outcome of the work between Justice and Service Nova Scotia to determine where we go next.
the intention to do something similar to what you did last year with the cabarets.
So I don't want to predetermine the outcome of what the next steps may be around the work, but I can say that Service Nova Scotia has made improvements. Public safety is a priority, and it's something that we do need to be continuously improving, and we are. So we've already seen improvements that were made in relation to criminal record checks and in relation to training. So we're continuing that work. We're continuing to work together with departments, and we'll be talking with families soon, and then we'll look at next steps following that.
Just one other on this. I appreciate that from a legal standpoint, maybe just proclaiming something that's a decade or 15 years old may not be the most prudent thing to do. The family's concern, I think, is probably less about whether or not that bill gets proclaimed than whether or not the intent of the bill is carried forward. And so what can you say about your willingness to address that?
Yeah, so I appreciate that question. Our objective is very much public safety, and I really appreciate the family's advocacy around this. And we're absolutely focused on making what improvements we can, listening to the family and understanding the sector, and then moving forward in a way that reflects those objectives.
Thanks, Minister. Thank you.
Good luck with the ERA.
Thanks very much.
Minister McGuire is up next. I don't see him yet, but I will let you all know when he's in the wings there. Yeah. Right. Minister of Education, Minister McGuire is making his way up. He'll be here in just a moment. He's coming. There he is. Good morning, Minister.
It's weird not to see Grumpy beside you. How was his, did you go to his thing? How was it? 2 days to recover?
Minister, when are we going to see the school code of conduct?
So right now, what I can tell you is that we're continue to work on it, fine tune it. I'm not going to give a date, but what I will say is that, we just wanted to go back and review it, ensure that it's inclusive and it covers what we need when it comes to teachers, parents. We do have some support on how we're rolling this out. the head of PSANS agrees with how we're doing this, and how we're doing this is we're not rushing it. Like, I want to make sure that we encapsulate as many groups of students and parents and teachers as possible to make sure that they feel that their voice is heard in the code of conduct.
What prompted you to want to go back and review it again?
I just think it's an important document. Like, I really do. Like, and you know, I always go back to my own personal experiences. I have 3 children in school. They're in a very diverse school, and I want to make sure that all those kids and those teachers and parents and staff feel supported. I do think that you know, we don't have many opportunities to do things like this, and so I just want to make sure it's right.
I don't want to put a hard date, but are we talking like weeks, months, this
I
year?
just don't. Well, I mean, I'm gonna bring it out as quickly as we can, but right now I just want to go through and make sure that you know, we're getting it right. You know, for me, this is about taking the time to get it right.
Sir, I appreciate your comments, but there are a lot of teachers in schools right now who don't feel supported. They're dealing with high levels of concerning amounts of violence. They thought this thing was going to be ready last fall. Then they were told it was going to be ready this March. That's what you said when you were in the House. Now they're being told, we can't tell you when it's coming. So what is your message to people in schools right now who are dealing with violence, who are worried that help is not actually on the way?
So what I would say, well, first of all, I would say help is on the way. Second of all, what I would say is one incident of violence in school is too many. There are already procedures in place for that. And what I would say to them, and what I have said to them, whether it's the teachers union or PSANS, is that we need to get it right. Like, we just don't want to put a document out there that people don't have full faith in, and that potential groups don't feel captured in. So we're going to get this right, and the support will be there, and it is there now. And we're going to make sure that everybody that walks in that school, any school in Nova Scotia, is safe and feels safe.
Bilateral agreements with universities are due today. Is that 2% cap on tuition increases going to continue?
Sorry.
Bilateral agreements with universities.
Yeah.
We were told at a committee meeting, I think it was last week, that
Yeah.
they're due the end of this week. This is the end of this week. Are we going to see those 2% tuition caps increase?
So what I will say is that I'm not going to get into the details of it right now, because the universities still have that document in their hands. They're still looking it over. We're still in discussions with them. And you know, once it is signed, you know, we'll release the details. But right now, it's kind of, you know, I just don't want to get ahead of the universities, their senates and their boards.
Any of them signed it and sent it back yet? Because they're individual documents, right? It's not just one for all of them.
Again, like, I would love to tell you, but I can't. I just, you know.
I'm not asking you which schools. I'm just asking if any have signed them yet.
So I would love to tell you that some have or some haven't, or some. But the truth is that, you know, being respectful to the organizations, we're not releasing if any of them have signed or not signed yet, because, you know, I don't want to put any type of undue pressure on any of the other universities. What I can tell you is that, you know, we're having great discussions with them. I've had multiple meetings with the university presidents. I understand the pressures that they're under, whether it's fiscally or from their senates and their boards. I do expect that the MOUs will be signed by all the universities.
Today the deadline?
We're going to give them. Yeah. So what I would say about that is we're in continuing discussions with them, and they will be signed very soon.
It's like a very
Are you
soft.
giving extensions?
That sounds like a very soft deadline. So today's not the deadline?
Brian, what I will say is, you know, we want to make sure that, again, these are important documents, and I want to make sure that we're working with our universities on these things, and we expect them all to be signed very soon.
Minister, it would be very hard for any university not to sign the agreement, given how much funding the province gives them. I mean, do they really have a choice here?
Everybody has choice, right? But what I would say is that, you know, we're working with them. Once the MOU is signed, that's when the heavy lifting starts, and we are committed to working with every single university individually on the regulations for their university. So, you know, they know that, they're aware of that, and their presidents know that we're going to be working side by side with them, our department is, to ensure that each university is unique in this province, and that they get what they need to be sustainable. Like, this is all about sustainability and making sure that with the fiscal pressures that they're feeling, that they're here for the long run.
Will there be a tuition cap as part of these deals?
Again, I can't get into the details of the MOU, but that will all be released shortly. I apologize.
So for kids who are thinking about going to school, university in Nova Scotia in the fall, and thinking about a student loan or going to a bank and trying to determine how much this is going to cost them, how long will they have to wait before knowing what the state of that tuition cap is? Will they find out this month?
Oh yeah, I would say it'll be sooner rather than later. This is one of the discussions that we've had. We want to have this MOU out the door fairly quickly, so that students have an understanding when they're choosing universities here in Nova Scotia of what to expect and what not to expect. So I expect that this will be done fairly soon.
Will you proactively,
No,
just to put a bow on it, will you proactively disclose that once it's done, or
Yeah.
are we going to have to?
No, I'm not going to do like a Friday afternoon thing. It's going to be. Yeah, Thursday afternoon. No, we'll make sure we'll make sure we reach out to you and you have that information.
Want to guard against is, late this afternoon, are we going to get a news release where, we've had our opportunity to talk to you.
Well, if you do, it'll be news to me. So I will, I try to be as respectful as possible. And, I understand that all of you had deadlines and, I'm not one for slipping information out on a Friday afternoon. When it's ready, we'll make sure that you're aware of it.
I don't want to get too bogged down in semantics, but you've been using the term MOU last week.
Bilateral, sorry.
I just want to make sure that it hasn't changed, that it hasn't shifted to something else.
Yeah, no, it's a bilateral agreement. Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
It's fine.
As part of those agreements, is the aligning university goals with government goals, is that baked into these agreements as well?
So I'm not going to get into the details, but what I will say is this, is that the universities are under a tremendous amount of pressure fiscally and with enrollments. And, they're standalone institutions and they're making decisions, and we're helping them where we can make decisions to make sure that they're financially viable. And part of that is aligning with some of the needs, not just here in Nova Scotia, but globally.
I'm also wondering about overcrowding in schools. I have that effect on people. I spoke with some parents last week whose students or their kids, they're going to be impacted by the grade shuffles with the Bedford schools.
Yeah.
And they're saying it's great that new schools are coming online, but however, families are still always wondering where their kids are going to be going to school. Basically, they're not coming online fast enough. So just wondering what else is being done to address the overcrowding.
So obviously with the schools, the overpopulation is a concern. HRM is growing at in my lifetime, probably the fastest rate I've seen. But 12 of the 19 schools that are being built now are in HRM, so we're aware of it. When it comes to realigning the population of the school, that is RCEs, the Regional Centers for Education make those decisions, and they're constantly monitoring that. So that is something that they deal with directly, and they've done a really good job over the years dealing with this, from every community across Nova Scotia. So what I would say to those parents is we're building as fast as we can, and we understand the pressures, and we want to make sure that your children have the best possible, whether it's code of conduct, whether it's the curriculum or it's the building around you. We want to make sure that they have the best possible educational experience. But right now, when it comes to the realignment, that's the RCEs. Yeah.
That's all the time we have, Mr. Thank you so much.
You guys have a great Easter weekend.
You too. All right, next we have Minister of Health and Wellness, Minister Thompson, will be up in just a moment.
Oh, I know. Thanks for not putting all that stuff on TV last night with Jan and I.
Sometime when we have more time, I'll play things through. Minister, the tender that's gone out for the master plan work for the next phase of the QE2 redevelopment, one of the things I was struck by in that was the assessment and evaluation of the existing buildings. I would have thought that was already done as part of the process that the Liberals began. I appreciate you've had to make changes because of population growth and a bunch of other things, but I'm sort of surprised that that's maybe not already on the books. So was it, and you just want to do it again, or has really no one ever assessed the current lifespan remaining for those buildings?
Well, I would say the RFP is in keeping with the announcement we had in December of 2022. So that old project was not a project that we were able or willing to move forward with. And so in December, we talked about some potential changes. And so now that HIEP is settled, and we're moving forward with that, Dr. Christine Short mentioned that now that master planning is happening in Central Zone, and this is the next extension of that. So in the context of that plan, which was announced December of 2022, we need to really understand, what is the art of the possible moving forward as we continue to transform the healthcare system and the infrastructure, and particularly in Central Zone.
If that work determines that we actually need another hospital building, do we have the financial capacity to do that right now?
I think that's the work of the RFP. What capacity do we currently have? What's required? What is the art of the possible? And I don't want to presuppose anything. That's an important. That will be an important document for us in terms of planning to understand what we can do, when we can do it, if we can do it, all of those types of things. But we need experts to come in, look at the lay of the land, look at the population, look at the needs, current assets, all of the things, 100 things I'm probably not even mentioning, and really come and sit down and talk to us about what they believe is next. And there'll be clinical involvement, of course, as well as the folks who do construction.
Hi, Minister. I'm hearing from families who've been removed from the Need a Family wait lists, and they're in limbo as they wait a call from the clinic that they're supposed to be attached to. Some of these families tell me that they've been waiting several months for that outreach, and they had no primary care in the interim, and yet they're no longer on this wait list. So do you know how many people are sort of in that category of being in limbo?
No, and what I would say to folks who are in that position, number one, to really leverage the points of access, right? So they know that attachment is pending, that they have been connected to a clinic. In some cases, they may want to phone that clinic. There's also a 1-800 number I can give you if you want, that you could publish, so people would have it. But what's really important for folks to remember is all the points of attachment that people can attend to if they need care. So even though they may have been on the Need a Family Practice Registry or are now attached to the clinic, all of those things are still available to them. So the pharmacy clinics, the mobile clinics, being able to reach out to urgent treatment centers, all of those things. And so they should continue. They can call that 1-800 number to ask, or they could actually, call the clinic that they've been assigned to.
Absolutely. Is it, however, perhaps a bit disingenuous to look at that waitlist number as dropping off when many of the people tell me that they've been removed from it and are for months still waiting? Is that a clear reflection of what the reality is?
If they've been called, they're attached to a clinic. It will take for a period of time. So people are being attached from the Need a Family Practice Registry. So based on the capacity in the practice, any number of patients could be attached, could be 800, could be 1350, whatever the number is. But all of those individuals can't be onboarded immediately. So there is a rapid onboarding team that works with these new practices, brings people in, they have their initial meetings. It's very hard to take on 1,000 patients in a short period of time. But if they have been attached to that clinic and there is something pressing, they should phone that clinic and see if they're able to be seen. And if not, if it's an episodic complaint that they have, then they should avail themselves of all the different access points that are available.
I might be misunderstanding the process, but I thought attachment is conditional on that initial meeting where the doc and the patient determine whether or not that's going to be a good fit. Like to Lindsay's point, it sort of seems presumptuous on the part of the health authority and the government to give itself credit for removing people from a list because they're pending attachment without knowing for sure. I've heard from people who got a pending attachment and it was with a practice that was more than an hour away and they had to make the determination, this isn't going to work.
Right.
So it does seem like you folks are putting the cart before the horse a little bit to your benefit to say each month, look at the number coming down.
I think it depends on the case. So certainly recently when I was on the doorsteps, I had heard individuals who were offered a practice further outside of Antigonish, and they were willing to do that, right, based on their circumstances. I heard from other people on the doorsteps who weren't willing. They wanted to wait and have a practice be attached to a practice that was closer to Antigonish than what they were offered. And so,
Attachment will happen if you take them off the list.
no. So the people that wanted to wait were not attached. They remained on the list. And I don't think it's very common for people to actually go and have a physician say, I'm not going to attach you, right? Like, I don't think that's really how it works. If that were the case, those individuals could call and that number and say, I was offered a place that's not going to work for me. And so the process remains. So, it is a fluid process. We can't take 1,000 people and put them within a month. But I think the assumption really is, I don't have any stats to say that there's a disproportionate number of people who are not accepting that attachment. I've had people decline that attachment because of the travel or perhaps other different personal reasons. But if you got a call and said, this is your practice, I haven't heard that there's been a significant number of people on their initial meeting that they say, oh no, this isn't the practice for me. The details are shared with them up front in terms of who it is, where the clinic is, the distance, et cetera.
The concerns I'm hearing is that some people are going more than 6 months before ever getting contact.
They should call the number.
And these people are calling those numbers. In one of these cases, someone was not able to actually directly reach out to the clinic at all. They're waiting, and now they don't have that same access.
It's really hard for me to really do anything if I don't have the name of the individual to support that. So what I would say is they could they could reach out to their MLA. They could reach out to 811 if something's changed. They can reach out to that number.
We only have 2 minutes, so Jacob.
It's not on the same topic, but I was wondering, have you seen an influx of U.S. medical professionals reaching out and considering moving here with the state of affairs, let's say, down south?
So we've certainly been present in the U.S. market, is what I would say, recognizing that things have certainly been changing, particularly even pre-election. Recruitment efforts have ramped up in the States. We have had some traffic, and I don't know that I would say an influx yet, but certainly there is interest, and you can imagine it takes some time to consider. There's immigration issues, work permits, packing up your life and closing down a practice if you're planning to move takes some time. But we certainly feel that it is a promising market, and we've been aggressive in the market talking about what Nova Scotia has to offer, some of the changes that are happening here. And so I think as the months go on, we'll be able to talk about that a little bit more.
Have any way of initially quantifying to say yeah, we've had an increase in the last 2 months of people reaching out?
I don't, no.
Guy, did you have a question? No?
Can we just quickly go back to the list?
Yep.
For the folks who aren't a match, and so they effectively go back on the list, do they resume the place they had on that list?
What I would say is that the list is not necessarily a place.
No, so I understand that.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I get what you're saying.
Can also be seen and followed through the primary care clinics. So we have a number of clinics, right? So once you're on the list, if something changes or you need regular, illness management, we have a number of primary care clinics across the province. So again, in certain communities, and I've visited a number of them, when you're on the list, on the Need a Family Practice Registry, you are covered and cared for by this primary care clinic on a regular routine basis. And when a new clinician comes to your community, you can be attached to that clinic. And so that's one, to support the patient, but also to support, a new practice where people's care is maintained and looked after. So there are a number of different avenues, which is why I say it's really important that people remember the points of attachment. And so if individuals don't feel that they're adequately attached and they've been seen in a primary care clinic, that is probably also a potential for them to continue to receive care. So remembering where the points of access are in the system, knowing that there is a primary care clinic system that supports people on the Need a Family Practice Registry who can be seen, for short-term or long-term in order to have their needs met, but also, and then waiting for a new clinician. So if that clinician's not suitable for you, or you're not suitable for them, or however that relationship breaks down, we need to wait for space in another practice. But in the meantime, those primary care clinics are there, as well as those other access points.
Is it misleading that these people are removed from that list before that attachment is finalized?
I don't believe it is. No.
Yep, that's all the time we have. Next, we have Minister Tilley is up next. I think he'll be here in just a moment. Who did you say? Minister Tilley is next, yeah. Welcome.
Shannon Park, the province is buying some of the land at Shannon Park for, we understand, affordable housing. The local councillor thinks some of the housing might first be put, though, to a place for construction workers to stay who are building the Halifax Infirmary. Is that something you're considering?
Yeah, so, I mean, as you know, our job was to purchase the land through the Strategic Land Fund. Currently, there's no plans for that area. We know it's zoned for up to 600 units, and a plan will be developed by housing.
So there might not even be affordable housing? You have no plans at this moment for that land?
We know we want to maximize affordable housing for that area, and it's zoned for up to 600, but there's currently, the plans have not been developed.
Why not? It's desperately needed. You just said so yourself. Why wouldn't you be getting on that with utmost urgency?
Well, I guess our role through Public Works is to purchase the land. So we've done that. Through our strategic land fund, and now we turn that over to other departments to do the planning.
Do you see the urgent need for it around here in the city? Do you think the government needs to get on it?
And I'm sure, as we move forward, the plans will be put in place, and then we'll all know where we stand with housing in that particular area. But I'm very proud of what the government has done with regards to housing. We've been working very hard, and our housing department is doing a great job over there.
Clear where we stand on housing? You said it will be determined where we stand on housing in that area. I think that's pretty clear.
The plans to develop that area.
The need is pretty clear already.
Well, there's absolutely a need for housing in Nova Scotia.
And what about, maybe this isn't you, but PCL has said the workforce to build the new acute care tower at its peak between 1,400 and 1,500 people. Does the province have to figure out where to put those workers while they're here?
Well, I mean, whenever we have a big construction project, there's going to be lots of workers that come in to do that work. So that would all factor into the planning and development of that project.
Province's responsibility and not, say, just PCL's responsibility to find a place for the
I mean,
workers?
I think it's everyone's responsibility at the end of the day to figure out how we're going to build some big infrastructure for Nova Scotia.
And can I ask you about the pesky Avon River Abateau in Windsor, if you don't mind?
You sure can.
I was talking to Cody Blois, and he says it's his understanding that right now the ball is back in the province's court, that you guys are supposed to supply some information. And I look back in October and I see that DFO told you guys to submit a revised fisheries application with complete information. Your existing application continues to be complete or inadequate. Have you done that?
So this is a frustrating file. So this file's been on the go now for 6 years. So we've done our job with the building that as much as we can build until we get approval to complete the Abateau. We've submitted several over the years, several iterations. Most recently, we've met with the folks from DFO, our staff, to try and determine what it is they actually need from us. So that work is ongoing, and a new submission will be made as soon as possible.
When was that meeting?
It was within the last few weeks.
I think they were pretty clear. The problem was the operating scenario for the Abateau that you guys wanted is one that doesn't meet the Species at Risk Act or the Fisheries Act. So are you going to submit a different operating scenario?
Again, so working through the technical folks, it's important to get this right. you know, when this is built, when the approval comes in, it's still several years away from being built. So at the end of the day, we got to get moving on this file, and we're doing our work in the department to submit to DFO that negotiated piece to try and get that done.
People
How
who
is it
drive
that
that.
officials from your department and the feds can't just get in a room and figure this out? It's been like 8 years.
You're preaching my song here. So absolutely, you know, that was one of the meetings that took place several weeks ago. We're trying to work with the officials from DFO to come up with a mutually acceptable agreement.
It's going to take a change in government to get this approved by DFO?
You know, at the end of the day, it's at a staff level, and we work both with staff from our department and DFO to try and get this done. So we're working very hard on this, and nobody wants this completed more than we do.
So the people, the people driving the highway every day who you know, it's a bit dangerous there. It goes from 6 lanes down to 4 very quickly and back again. To them, you know, what would you say when the federal MP is saying it's the province holding it up?
Well, I would disagree with the federal MP, and I think when you have any negotiated piece, and I'd be happy to sit down with the federal MP when the election is over, if he's still the MP, and we can work on it together and try and maybe work on it from our side.
To what degree is this impasse the result of your government's commitment to the local MLA to preserve that lake?
Again, we've submitted numerous responses back and forth.
Do all of your responses include a way to preserve the lake? Because the reality is the people who are advocating for fish passage say there is no way to meet the federal requirements for fish passage and maintain that lake.
Mm-hmm. So there's numerous situations that require through emergency management, all those types of things. So again, we are working with DFO to try and come up with a respectable, mutually beneficial solution that will allow us to move forward with the Abateau.
Just to clarify, you haven't made any new submission yet. You've had talks.
We've had talks. Yeah, we've submitted many over the last. Yeah.
Since October, I guess, is what I'm trying to clarify. Yeah.
Minister, I was asking the Premier about the McDonald Bridge contract, and I was just wondering, are there any rules or regulations you can point to that now govern U.S. bidders on government contracts?
You know, I think when you look at the Premier's statements, our job is to do what's best for Nova Scotians. It's to protect Nova Scotians, it's to protect safety. When you look at this contract in particular, would I prefer that we have a Nova Scotian company to do this work? Absolutely. But at the same time, when we need to get this done, we need to get this done safely. We didn't have that option. And I'm very happy with the fact that over 70% of the workforce will be Canadian, 90% of the goods will be purchased here in Nova Scotia. And I think even in a story yesterday, there was an organization, Nova Scotia organization, that was extremely happy to be doing work on this project. So we've got to get this done. 40,000 vehicles a day cross the McDonald Bridge. And as Minister, my #1 priority is to make sure they have safe passage and that we do the right thing for Nova Scotia.
Was that local content negotiated with the threat of that the Premier had articulated back in March hanging over this consortium?
Again, so it's through a competitive bid process that this was awarded. There's, again, 70% of the workforce will be Canadian, 90%.
I know that, you've already said it. We're getting low on time. Were those numbers negotiated with the company with the threat of, well, we could pull this back at any time?
I'd have to get back to you on that because I wasn't involved in the procurement process.
So I'm wondering in general with procurement, are there criteria that are now in place? Because the Premier has made a statement in March, and he repeated in April, that U.S. firms will not be allowed to compete for Nova Scotia government contracts. Are there actual rules in place that you can point to?
Right. So at the end of the day, as I stated at the beginning, The important thing here is that we do what's right for Nova Scotians. And every contract negotiation will be different. Every potential project would have different bidders. And where possible, we absolutely want to use Nova Scotian companies to get work done here in Nova Scotia.
Firms that want to bid on Nova Scotia contracts to do what this consortium has done, to set up an office in Nova Scotia, register with the joint registry, and employ Nova Scotians?
Well, I think the important thing, if we look at this.
I mean this contract. I mean generally, contracts going forward.
Right. So every contract going forward would be different. So if you look at, just to use this contract as an example, there were no Nova Scotia companies or Canadian companies that were compliant in their bid to do this work. The work absolutely needs to get done. It's a 2-year project. We have to make sure that the bridges are completed, that it's safe for Nova Scotians to travel every day. And that's what's most important at this point. The safety of Nova Scotians, keeping as much of that money within Nova Scotia is a bonus to that.
The Bridge Commission declared that this is a Nova Scotia joint venture. Do you agree with that?
Well, again, that was through the procurement process, and I don't have the details to comment.
On how many or the value of contracts that have so far been either canceled, existing contracts, or American bidders were not allowed to compete?
I don't have that. That would be, you'd have to go through a procurement for that.
Time we have. Thanks, Minister. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, next on the docket, we have Minister Rushton. It is a docket. It's a docket today. Hi, Minister Rushton. Eve Jacob, you had a question for Minister Rushton.
I do.
Yeah.
Am I the only one?
Yes.
Even better. So, Minister Rushton, we now passed legislation lifting the exploration for uranium ban. What progress has the department made since the sitting of the legislature?
Yeah, so lots of conversations taking place with industry. Also, now if you have an exploration license in Nova Scotia, you can now be looking into the possibility of what uranium is. And we would need those that are out in the field, if they do run into it, we need them to report it through the process. And I do want to highlight, one of the biggest questions we do get is there permitting required for exploration? Not unless you're disturbing the ground, things such as drilling and things. Typically, they're doing land scans and things. There's a lot of work going into it, and to gather the information that they're gathering up to help us do the research. We know there's deposits of uranium in specific areas in Nova Scotia, so we're looking at the possibility of specific site projects for there as well. 3 weeks, I think we've been out of the legislature, still fairly new, but there's been a lot of work going on in the place already.
Do you have any idea where those site projects might happen?
I would tell you the names of the community. I mess it up, but we can certainly share that. I think through the course of the legislation, we shared the communities, but we'll make sure we highlight that again.
And with the statement from the Mi'kmaq chiefs on fracking, that they reject this, have you sort of dodged a bullet with uranium, or are you planning on consulting with them and anticipating a similar pushback?
Yeah, no, look, the fracking is obviously under the Minister of Energy, but what I'd say is every project has to have that conversation, and we respect our Mi'kmaq partners. We respect the legal duty to do consultation with our Mi'kmaq partners. I think my personal history and the relationship that I've had with my partnering chiefs at different committees speaks volumes for itself. But yeah, we are absolutely going to work with El New Affairs and respect the legal duty that we have to do consultation and be a working partner with the Mi'kmaq.
I'll look up the site-specific locations, but do you plan on consulting just everyday people in these areas to see how they feel about any potential drilling or whatever these site projects look like being in their area?
Yeah, look, I don't want to speak of what that permitting process looks like. Part of it would be under environment as well, but absolutely through that process there is a portion of community consultation, and absolutely this is a new era for Nova Scotia, and conversations do have to take place. Thanks everyone. Have a good weekend.
All right, Minister Ritchie is up next. Hi, Minister.
The libraries of Nova Scotia are asking for $1.6 million in emergency funding and a revision of the funding formula. What are you, where is the work on that in your department?
You know what, right now, we value our libraries right across this province and our communities. And, you know, we are considering the request from the council for 1.6 in the additional funds for this year, and we'll continue to consider that.
It's been a couple of months since they made this emergency request. Isn't at some point delaying a response essentially denying the request?
Not necessarily. We had a library funding review committee that made recommendations to form funding mechanisms and decisions, and the province continued to review those opportunities.
How long do you expect the review process to take?
We'll continue to review the funds that are, or the consideration. We'll continue to consider the funding request.
$1.6 million in the grand scheme of things doesn't seem like a huge amount, but it would have a drastic effect on these libraries. Like how much is there to really consider here?
Well, I think truly, again, I'll take it back that we value our libraries. We continue to work with them. We communicate with them on an ongoing basis, and we'll continue to do that.
Agree with the assessment that libraries at this point provide public services, aside from lending books, that relieve the provincial government from having to take on some of those initiatives?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. They provide resources and funding or programs in our communities and to everyone in our communities, to be honest with you. So they're a valued partner. We continue to communicate and continue to work with them.
Bang for the buck?
Good bang for the buck.
All right, thanks,
Okay,
Minister.
thank
Those little tiny potatoes you get in the.
All right, we're going to move along. We have Minister Lohr here now with us. Hi, Minister.
Minister, what conversations have you had with anybody, be it grocery stores or convenience stores or breweries or wineries, about the potential of the public being able to buy alcohol somewhere other than the NSLC or the private liquor stores in this province?
So I'm aware that we do get requests from time to time about expanding retail options. Those have been very limited conversations. We do have requests on that, but there's been no decisions made on that.
No decisions yet, but have you been involved in any conversations about this subject?
I honestly think I've been involved in one conversation.
What do you think about this idea, Minister?
So this is something, obviously, we're in a time of change in our country, triggered by tariffs, in fact, by, and our Premier just yesterday signed an MOU with Ontario. Obviously, alcohol is part of that discussion across the country. The rules around alcohol have developed differently in different provinces, and if we're going to have freer trade, then we'll all need to look at how we manage that. As far as changes in Nova Scotia, there's many stakeholders. They're important to us. All of those stakeholders are important to us. So any changes will not be done without extensive consultations.
Are you interested in the idea?
Well, I think clearly there's a direction across the country on that. So yes,
Are you interested in the idea?
Yes, we are interested in that idea.
You happen to live in a district where there's quite a bit of production. I wonder, have you heard from wineries or breweries down your way about this idea?
So I haven't heard directly from them on this subject recently, but I mean, I think I've heard in the past from them on it, yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead. No, you go ahead. Given where this is right now, and you've been around government for a while now, is this months away, years away from a decision on this?
I think any decision will be prefigured by extensive consultation. We'll need to hear from Nova Scotians, from stakeholders. There's many stakeholders, so that will have to happen first.
Sorry, you go ahead.
As the guy in charge of the purse strings, do you have any sense, as your department looked at what sort of impact there might be on provincial revenues moving this way?
So, I mean, obviously that's another factor for us. It's no secret that the alcohol revenues are important to us. So that will be a factor for us in the decision-making process, clearly.
This has been considered before. The Ham government did a pretty extensive look at it, and I think they hired a consultant at one time to help them look at it. From your understanding, why haven't governments gone in this direction in the past?
Yeah, I don't recall anything about what the Ham government did on the subject in terms of, I can't really comment on what previous governments did or didn't do or why they didn't do it. I mean, here we are, we've arrived at this moment in time. Clearly, there's a national interest in seeing freer trade across our country in many different areas, including alcohol. That's important to us. We realize, yeah.
Putting alcohol in corner stores, does that really have much to do with trade?
So we do get requests about expanding retail options for alcohol, and this will be part of that consultation process.
Minister, if you were to make a change, do you know whether you could do it through regulations or would you need to pass legislation?
So I actually do not know that. I'd have to find that out. I really don't know that. Good question, though.
All right, second from last today, we have, in just a moment, Minister Boudreau will be up. Hi, Minister. Hello.
Sir, I just want to ask you about fracking and what the Mi'kmaq chiefs had to say a few weeks ago. Is it possible to, what is possible right now, given the opposition of the Mi'kmaq chiefs to fracking?
I think we've been very clear as a government. We're very excited about the opportunities in natural resources and the abundance that we have, and natural gas is one of them. We have significant natural gas underneath our feet, and so our department, now that we've gotten out of the legislature and the legislation has passed, we're moving forward. We are looking at best practices in other jurisdictions. We're looking at regulatory regimes. We're putting that all in place to move forward and have good conversations with industry about what the art of the possible is, and also continuing to work with as these projects move forward, have engagement and consultation with community and with the Mi'kmaq.
So consultation with the Mi'kmaq will happen on a project by project basis rather than as a concept.
Yeah, we take the legal duty to consult very seriously with the Mi'kmaq, and they've been great partners on a number of different projects. I can think of the recent announcement of the Intertie and some of the wind projects that we've had, and we've had great conversations about the potential of this province. I've had conversations with the WMA. I've had conversations with some of the chiefs, and just we understand that they have concerns. We want to make sure that as we move forward and as projects move forward, that we are consulting in an appropriate and respectful way and working together to find a way forward.
You understand why some people might be skeptical when you say that you take the constitutional duty to consult seriously when there was no consultation ahead of the legislation that was drafted and tabled this winter.
I think we can all agree that things shifted fairly quickly after our election in terms of what's going on south of the border and how what the effects of that are.
It was November. The session was started in February. There was no time between November and February to pick up the phone and call the chiefs?
Like I said, we understand that we have these natural resources, and we understand that we have natural gas, we have wind, we have potential for geothermal, and we're moving forward to look at, not only from an energy security perspective, but from an economic security perspective. 100% of the natural gas right now that comes into Nova Scotia comes through the U.S. We are at risk as that happens. So we need to look at what are the opportunities. This is one that's under our feet. And so we have a duty to Nova Scotians to make sure that we look at what is the art of the possible, what can we do safely and responsibly, and I think that as a government, that is a priority.
Can fracking legally happen in Nova Scotia without the consent of First Nations?
Hydraulic fracturing is a technology that's used.
I understand all of that, Minister, but I'm asking because I don't know the answer to this. There's a constitutional requirement for governments to consult with First Nations. In that context, can the province legally authorize a company to frack if it does not have the support of First Nation leadership in the province?
What I would say is with any project that requires duty to consult, you need to do that duty to consult. And we will do that as a province whenever that is required with any project. We believe that hydraulic fracturing or natural gas extraction can be done in a safe and appropriate way. And we believe that we can do it and that we can make sure that consultation happens in an appropriate way to see these things through.
I'm not trying to belabor this. And if you don't know, it's okay just saying we can check with the department. But is consultation enough to allow fracking to happen here, even if ultimately the First Nations oppose it?
Yeah, so that's exactly it. Consultation is exactly what that is. It's consultation. And you have those understandings of what the risks, what the benefits are, and you hear from organizations and groups, including the Mi'kmaq, and then you move forward in an appropriate way.
Duty is to consult, but you're not required to get their consent.
That's what duty to consult is.
I just want to clarify, following up on Brian's question about how the consultation will happen. So it sounds to me like it will be project by project, but you're not endeavoring to consult right now sort of generally on the topic of fracking. Is that right?
Yeah, so I think, the Premier and the Minister responsible for Elemental Affairs had conversations with the chiefs, and we'll continue to have that dialogue. I've had conversations with chiefs as well. I'm a former minister that was responsible, so have some relationships as there as well, and we respect those relationships and want to continue to have dialogue and make sure that we're informing where we can. The duty to consult is on a project-by-project basis.
If the main issue is less reliance on the U.S. here with natural gas, why not rely on getting it from another province who might already harvest natural gas or a European country?
So this is a great discussion about the potential for pipelines east as well. But what I would say is we have this natural asset under our feet, and what an opportunity to utilize what we have. And so not only does it provide you with the natural gas that we need, over 5,000 homes and 3,500 businesses in Nova Scotia use right now, but it's also about creating that economic benefit that comes with it. So jobs and supports that will help government, provide the services that Nova Scotians want, whether it's roads and hospitals and schools. So those are the types of things that are big picture. It looks at the whole concept of the economic side of it.
But is there a less contentious way to boost the economy using our resources, namely wind, which I believe is also your file?
We're going to look at all of our natural resources and the opportunities that we have. 4,700 wells were drilled in Canada last year. 80% of them were hydraulically fractured, and they were done safely. And so my argument is if it's being done safely in other jurisdictions, let's look at best practices. Let's look at what the art of the possible here and see what we can do here in Nova Scotia. We owe it to Nova Scotians.
Do you know yet enough about where these sites might be to say that there's a way to make them far enough from cities or densely populated areas where any contaminated area wouldn't affect communities?
Yeah, we're looking at all of that right now. We're kind of putting together, the best practices, looking at what is being done in other jurisdictions that we can identify, but also looking at where in Nova Scotia is best to look at this resource.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, one left. Minister Balser is last today, and she will be up shortly. I see her there, so she's making her way up now. Hi, Minister Balser. Hi. Hello.
Hi.
The seizure of illegal tobacco and charges have been rising in Nova Scotia. Why is that?
Well, I'd like to acknowledge the work of the team who has been working very hard, the enforcement team at Service Nova Scotia. They work very closely with the RCMP to make sure that seizures, when they happen, that we are doing our part to remove contraband tobacco products from our communities. So we have seen numbers going up in terms of seizures, and I think that's evident of the team doing the work that they need to do.
Is enforcement increasing because there's been a specific directive to increase
Well, we
it?
take this as this is a very important issue, and of course, it's a priority for the team. We want to make sure that we're doing our part to remove illegal tobacco products from communities across the province, and so that again means that the team has to work very closely with the RCMP, and that's exactly what they're doing. So we are going to continue to do that work and see if that continues, of course, to make sure that we're doing our part.
Just what I'm trying to parse though is are the seizures and charges going up because the incidents are themselves going up or because the enforcement has been going up?
Well, it is a bit of a complicated space, and so Service Nova Scotia's enforcement team is one part of it. So we provide that education to the RCMP so that when they're going in and doing the seizure, that they know what they're looking for, that they have that awareness and that understanding. And sometimes our team actually accompanies the RCMP, and sometimes they may not. And sometimes then that the products might be provided to our team, and then of course then the courts may be involved. So I think it's a reflection of everybody doing their part. It's awareness around the issue, and it's making sure that we continue to prioritize it through our piece that we're responsible with Service Nova Scotia.
I don't think that quite answers my question. Like, what is your sense of why, like, is the seizure of illegal tobacco and charges going up because it's happening more, that there is more illegal tobacco in Nova Scotia?
And that could be the case, that we are seeing more activity. We know that with our awareness again on the issue and to be able to look for what we need to look for, our focus is on making sure that we're doing our part. And so if seizures are increasing, again, that is a reflection of the work that's being done. But we have to continue to monitor this, and we have to continue to work with our CMP and do our due diligence to make sure that we're doing everything we can to remove illegal products from our communities.
Other side of this, tobacco tax revenues have dropped significantly. Why do you think that is?
So that kind of goes back into that complicated process where Service Nova Scotia is a part of that overall team that is responsible for this. And so if there are particular numbers, I know that the Department of Finance would be able to answer or perhaps direct any numbers that you're looking for in terms of taxes. But for our team, we're responsible for the enforcement side of things. And again, working with the RCMP to make sure that we are removing products from communities.
Maybe this will have the same answer, but do you think that it is the contraband that is contributing to tax revenues dropping, or are people simply smoking less?
I think it's a combination of both. And perhaps the Department of Health and Wellness might be able to weigh in on what we're seeing in terms of if Nova Scotians are not smoking, that's a good thing. But we know that this is all for the overall health and safety, of course, for all Nova Scotians. But yes, we are seeing tax revenues impacted by folks that are accessing contraband tobacco products. And that's another reason why it's so important that we stay focused on doing our part on the enforcement side and working with the RCMP and just removing those illegal products completely.
Are there any solutions to the problem of illegal tobacco aside from enforcement?
That's a great question. And I think it kind of goes back to the role of the RCMP, the role of enforcement, and perhaps there is more things that we can do. And I would look to the team's expertise to be able to inform myself of what else we can do, and looking at perhaps other jurisdictions and how they're addressing the same issue, because we know that it's happening across our country. So perhaps it's strengthening some of those relationships and just looking to one another for additional solutions. But for now, of course, we're going to make sure that that relationship between Service Nova Scotia and the RCMP is a strong one, and we continue to do the work that we need to do.
Back to the topic of taxes on this. Industry groups have long pressed for lower taxes on tobacco. Okay. They say it'll encourage people to buy legal cigarettes instead of illegal ones. Are you considering either lowering or raising tobacco taxes?
And I think that may fall under the Department of Finance, and so I'll make sure that the team follows up with you specifically. But I think, again, it's just more on a broader, for every agency, so Service Nova Scotia, RCMP, and Finance, to all make sure that we're working together and doing our part. But if there are other solutions that are being brought forward, I think that's really important that we make sure that we listen to them.
Thank you, Minister.
Thanks, Minister.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay.
I understand that Houston had promised in the last term that the government was looking into residential tenancies enforcement. Is that still happening?
So this was discussed in the legislative session that just recently passed, and of course it was a topic that was brought up, I believe it was last fall. So we are not moving forward with an enforcement agency, but we have strengthened our residential tenancy program. So knowing that there are changes that will be coming into force at the end of the month, we really want to make sure that Nova Scotians, tenants and landlords, know exactly what the program's there to do to help in any time of, if there's a dispute, if they need to find a resolution, but we have made changes to strengthen the program.
So the movement to release the final appeals through the tenancies program, that is essentially replacing any potential future enforcement. That is all that we get?
So it is the residential tenancy program, yes. So if there is a dispute between a landlord and a tenant, that's exactly where someone could come to the program. So we have residential tenancy directors who can work with the tenants, with landlords, to make sure that information is being brought forward and that hearings are being seen and heard in a very timely manner. That was one part of the enforcement unit that I think Nova Scotians were really looking to. What is a fast way to find a resolution? And it wasn't necessarily through an enforcement unit. And we saw that in other jurisdictions where they do, where provinces and territories do have them, that some of the timelines to find a resolution were over 6 months. So now I can say proudly, with some of the changes to our program, their hearings are being completed within 3 weeks. So it's just making sure that people have resolutions brought forward in a timely manner.
So hearings might be happening more quickly, but is that preventing any of these problems from happening in the first place? Do you have any numbers related to that?
I can definitely provide some numbers. I'll go back to the team to make sure. But we know that through the program, we want to make sure that Nova Scotians have the information that they need so that when a director is providing orders or needing information, that they're working with the tenant and the landlord to make sure that, again, that a resolution is being brought forward in a timely manner. And again, when we commissioned the report to look at what a compliance enforcement unit could look like. Again, there were pieces that I think Nova Scotians were hoping for, but an agency really wouldn't have met the outcomes. And one of them really was specifically around the timelines. So making sure that we could make changes to our existing program was really the focus, and we have achieved that.
And sorry, it seems to me that we've already known what the result of some of these appeals would be. Like there's a ruling that a landlord had not given back a security deposit or had charged an application fee for an application, and that's routine practice for landlords. Is that going down at all?
Well, and that's a perfect example of why folks need to come to the residential tenancy program. If they receive information from their landlord that's either not accurate or incorrect or even not allowed. And so making sure, again, that we're focusing on the team's delivery of a resolution in a timely manner so that a tenant, if that's what's happening, if they come to the residential tenancy program and say, this is the dispute that I'm experiencing with my landlord, that they have someone who's there to work through that process with them.
And you referenced a report detailing what compliance would look like in the province. Is there any way that I could acquire that report?
Yes, I believe that was shared when it was released, so yes. Yeah. No problem. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks.